Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And as Steve mentioned, I'm hailing from SoCal. It is cold and rainy today. So I'm going to first start with the roll call. Natalie, if you can call the roll call.
Daniel Munoz,
Present.
Tanya Fairley,
Present.
Kelly Funk,
Present.
Jacob Rostovsky,
Present.
Steve Weeks.
Present online.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And then next, we're going to look at the agenda or the minutes from last meeting, September 11th. And when you're ready, may I get a motion to approve the minutes and a second?
I move to approve these minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Weeks, second.
Great, second, thank you. And a roll call for that?
This is Sabina. We will go out for public comment and then our roll call.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you, Sabina. So we'll open up to public comment.
Putting it up first here in the room for any public comment. I have no public comment coming forward in the room.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen. If you're logged in via WebEx, click that question mark, type comments, send to all panelists, or if you're calling in, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. At this time, there are no requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes. All right, so we had a motion and a second. Can we move to a vote?
Daniel Munoz,
Aye.
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Aye.
Jacob Rostovsky,
Yes.
Steve Weeks.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The next item on the agenda was the discussion and possible recommendation regarding criteria for citing practice of medicine. And it sounds like Christy may have an update for us. Christy.
I do, thank you. So as mentioned in the prior meeting that we had on this agenda topic, we've had several meetings now with other executive officers of some of the boards within the Department of Consumer Affairs, the medical board, the nursing boards. And so we've been discussing the different types of services that we're seeing more and more common in the industry. You'll notice that there's nothing included in your packet for this item because basically after several discussions, how we are issuing citations is accurate. If at the end of the day, if someone is treating someone for a condition, that is defined as practice of medicine. So the way our statute reads is that someone cannot offer or perform any service that is considered practice of medicine. So anyone who is treating a condition, who is obviously going below certain levels of the skin, performing any type of incision, any type of injection is considered the practice of medicine. So we don't actually have a recommendation to the committee because it is the status quo for us. How we are doing things internally is currently how we feel is correct. Now, keeping in mind that we are working to try to educate people more on this, the steps that they're taking, because we know there's so much miscommunication to our licensees saying that they can perform these functions. And so we understand that, and we want to make sure that we provide some education to our licensees before taking any action. So that is definitely something we are working on. as we noted in the past. But we do not have a separate recommendation to change any way for how we are currently issuing our inspections or issuing any of our citations.
Christy, I have a question. So when
Yeah.
we say we are trying to communicate with the licensees, what about how are we communicating to manufacturers or distributors that these are not allowed in California, not approved by the board, not approved by the licensees? Because I mean, I can look at it on both sides. I understand that, you know, as a licensee, I should do my research and homework. But then you go to these hair shows that are here in California per se, and you have this flood of people selling the cavitation machines, the slimming machines, and they're saying, well, I'm here in California selling them, so I should be allowed to buy it.
So there's no regulation of any of these manufacturers. They can do, they can advertise wherever they want, and they can, there's no oversight. In the past, we've talked to some of the shows, and we've been told that the shows are open not only to our licensees, but also open to physicians or nurses who are performing some of these duties correctly. There's one of the reasons why we like to have a presence at the shows, because we have often, that's our biggest question. People go to a booth and are told they can perform a certain service, and they walk right over to our booth and ask us if it's true. Manufacturers are trying to sell their equipment, and they're telling licensees that it is allowed in California when it's not. So we have to get the word out that the licensees do have to check, because we don't have any authority to tell manufacturers what they can do or how they can market their devices.
I have a question. Would it be possible at the trade shows in California for us to have some sort of a document that would then be attached to the booth that is selling that just says this is not allowed in this state, but could be purchased here and practiced in other states? Is there maybe any kind of jurisdiction where we can put a little stamp of a notification on the sales booth itself in California at these trade shows? Just an idea.
I would say no, because again, we don't have any authority. We have nothing in our law that we can refer back to. But one of the things we say at the show is we have a sign that says objects that are for sale at this show may not be within your scope of practice. So we do have that. Now, I will warn all of us for 2024, we are, as many of you know, California is facing a budget crisis, and so our travel is going to be limited. So we likely won't be able to make it to as many shows as possible. So that's going to be unfortunate. So we're going to have to increase our outreach to our licensees, reminding them of what they need to do and what they need to look for when they go to these shows.
Christy, it's Steve. Can we increase the bandwidth on our websites to somehow devote more information on this, given that it's a huge fine to the licensee for getting involved in the practice of medicine, and most importantly, it could be a real risk to the public health and safety. So maybe something devoted to just this, because I think talking to some of these people after the fact, they say they try and reach us about this. And if we had it there 24 hours a day, easily accessible, maybe that would be very helpful to our people.
That's a great idea. We can start increasing that now. I know there's a big show, I believe, next month. So we will start getting that message out.
Right.
And I have one question as well. This could be Christy or anyone who's gone through the school, but to what extent is this particular piece covered in their curriculum when they're going through their schooling?
Well, practice of medicine items are not in their curriculum, so they're not being taught, at least not within what we're requiring them to teach. They're not being taught how to do these things.
The limit of their scope, like how much is that part of their curriculum, like the limits of their scope? Do we know? Is it just up to each school?
I think it's up to each school. I would say there's not something specifically that goes over. I mean, some schools I'm sure might do that on their own, but in looking at our laws and regulations, I don't believe there's something that specifically says you should be training on what is not allowed.
Okay, got it. I know like parallel, like our Board of Behavioral Services, part of our training as clinicians is we are taught exactly like the hard stop of our scope. And we have to take the law and ethics exam even just to renew our license, and that we are like required to be tested on the laws of our scope. So I was just thinking from that lens, if there's anything in the schools already.
That's an interesting idea. Our state does not have a state specific exam. And I do know that's something that other states do have. So we don't test on our actual laws and regulations. We test on a national exam. So that is something the board or this committee could consider looking at in the future.
Mhm.
But also too, California does not have continuing education requirements. So therefore, someone who passed their test and got licensed 30 years ago, unless they're tuned into the internet, really lacks any knowledge of anything that is changing or upcoming, because we do not require any continuing education, which is where that information would come in at, right? Like renewing and understanding the scope of your licensing, I would say, as far as an educational piece. I often wondered why we don't have continuing education requirements because of how things change. But I do know that when it comes to the scope of practice and all that, unless I call the board or ask questions of who's, selling something, the communication is really up to the licensee.
Oh, got it. Okay, that's very helpful. Then,
Oh, sorry.
oh, go ahead, Kelly.
Perhaps we could develop a reminder of the scope of practice specific to each license category that would go out with their renewal as they renew their license. Just a little piece of paper that goes in there and just reminds them of the scope of practice. Just an
Mhm.
idea of a licensee specific scope of practice overview.
Kelly, I literally just wrote that note down to myself.
You did. It would be a
Awesome.
really good opportunity. It's every 2 years, just a reminder. I love that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna start working on some ideas of that.
that's great. I like that.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to say too, Kelly, you took my thought process was the same also was because we got the cars. Well, I know I did. And I handed them out to all the barbershops that are in my neighborhood because they were driving me nuts with stuff they were doing. But there's a card that, they, at our last meeting, I think we got it right, where it says the scope of practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Something, yeah, that card, that right there is plenty. It's not a long drawn out piece of paper. It has the bullet points. It tells you what you can do and what you cannot do, and that's it. So I think that's something that's really, really good to put in that.
Great.
It's a great opportunity. We're already spending the money on the mailed out license renewals. So just a couple extra pieces of paper in that envelope.
Yes,
But very powerful information.
that's great. And assuming it would go out in the language that they have registered is proficient in. Great.
I was
That's what I was
thinking,
kind of getting at is
Oh.
where can we help them? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Jacob.
oh no, it's kind of like I'm a public member. I'm just thinking like as a member of the public, I wouldn't know what is scope of medicine. Like if I wasn't on this board, right, I would have no idea, the X, Y, and Z is not allowed, right? So like I can walk in somewhere and even if the person performing the services know, they think, oh, I can like get away with something, right? And do it anyways. And so knowing this board is to protect consumers, my thought is there a way that we can develop some type of, I don't know, poster or something that's like mandated to be in shops or businesses that people can see and say, you know, these are things like, is your barber doing this? Right? Then no. Because you know, that would be helpful as well. You know, I was thinking like similar to the prior meeting, you know, Steve was saying about like fraud, right? About like not reporting specific things within 90 days. Like that's kind of my thought here. My brain is not working for. I have not enough coffee, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say is like, is there a way that we can make public aware of these things? Because TikTok and Facebook and all these places are advertising things that might be legal in one state, right? But then the state you're living in is not. Like, how do you know? So that's
Like,
my
how
thought.
does
Is
the
like maybe
public
a
know?
poster or
I
something.
wouldn't know the
Yeah.
difference either as a public member if they offered me a service like that, and I'm like, okay, well, you're offering it. That means you can. I don't. Yeah, like I maybe the average consumer isn't thinking about it, but I thought we have a great outreach team. We do such a great job on the Instagram. I've been seeing that. So a short-term solution while we look at those long-term things would just, I'm assuming we could add this to a list of things we can add to our outreach on Instagram, and then work on, we can elevate that card idea and maybe put that on our next agenda item too, like later on in our agenda today, maybe we can add that. And then add in ideas for like long-term sustainable options, like one thing that goes out to establishments or something.
Yeah, because I mean, I'll just keep pushing is like, as like me as a member of public, if I wasn't on this board, I would not be following the Instagram. I would not be caring. I mean, like, I don't go to a barber, obviously, right? I mean, I don't have hair. But if I did, you know, those, I would just walk in and I'm the type of person that does read signs and that does look around. And if there's a big sign in big red letters, let's say, I would be like, huh, this is important. So I'm just thinking, yes, we're here to regulate and protect consumers through our licensees, but then how do we also reach our consumers? You know, because like I said, I wouldn't be following any of our stuff if I wasn't on this board. No offense, it's great stuff.
Yeah.
It's just I don't, you know, it's not my
Yeah,
thing.
wouldn't think to follow the board, right? Yeah, I like getting to the licensees for that reason. Like they should be our primary group because they do follow our stuff. So, but then adding that second layer of consumer outreach. And then I wanted to honor the fact that Christy said the way we're doing it now is the way we're supposed to be doing it. The citing part, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I feel like I wanted just to name that. That's great. That's a great job that you all are already doing the citing part correctly, and we should keep doing that. And then we can add on more layers of support to the licensees.
I think it should be noted that there's no license for a med spa. So there are a lot of businesses out there that are doing this 100% correct. There's licensed physicians, there's registered nurses who are working with estheticians in their facilities, and they're doing a wonderful job at it. But there's not a separate designation for a medical spa that kind of covers all of those aspects. There's the rules that a physician has to follow through the medical board, there's nursing rules, and then again, the ones that are following it correctly know that they have to have a license by us for an establishment. They know that their estheticians need to stay within their scope, and they're doing a wonderful job. But I think it's there's always been a lot of discussions over the fact that there's not really a single entity that licenses a medical spa in itself. So when talking about posting different signs, I mean, that's, we don't know how many establishments actually are even engaging in this type of service, rather unknowingly doing it, going out of their scope, or operating perfectly legitimate. So that's just something to keep in mind as well, that there isn't a designation for a medical spa.
Okay, helpful. And Christy, is there anyone in person there? Remind me for any comments.
I'm opening it up for any public comment here in the room, and I'm seeing no public comment here.
Okay. Anyone online?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click that question mark inside the square, type comment, and send it to all panelists. For those calling in, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. I did see a virtual hand, so if you would like to make a comment, please feel free to raise your hand again and we'll call on you. Okay, at this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Yeah, we'll go forward to number 4. Is there any public comment on items that are not on the agenda? In person first and then online.
I have no public comment here.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is open. Instructions are on the screen for your reference. Press the question mark, type comments, send it to all panelists. You can also raise your virtual hand here online if you're logged in. Just click on the hand outline at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. For those calling in, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. I do have Yanina. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. I will send a request to unmute your microphone. Just click unmute me. From your end, I'll set my timer and I'll confirm with the board here for 3 minutes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I've sent a request to unmute your microphone, Yania.
I want to give a quick note that it's not enough time for Q&A. If you close it right away, it's not enough time to type in the question. If it's closed right away, just so you're aware for further participants. And I believe that Jacob's idea is the best because consumers will have no idea what's allowed and what's not allowed. And as we know, enforcement exists because licensees not always follow the rules. So we need to be with the mind of consumer first. So thank you so much for that. And I wanted to ask, will we have any, will we be able to discuss any enforcement of illegal activities?
This is Sabina, legal counsel. If I understand your question correctly, so each committee is only allowed to discuss what's on their agenda for today. So so for example, right now we are on item number 4, and the agendas can be found on the board website. And so this is public comment on items not on the agenda. The next item is suggestions for future agenda items. I suggest if you have something specific, if you're wanting to discuss something very specific, not to say it publicly and perhaps reach out to the board directly. We don't want to accidentally disclose any information publicly that shouldn't be. But I hope that helps.
Is there on an agenda if I witness board give an examination to cosmetology school and regardless of illegal activities and that cosmetology school not following board rules, giving it approval anyway? Is it like anywhere on agenda?
Not today. This is Sabina again, but I think I see Christy Underwood, your executive officer, taking some notes, and perhaps, I don't know if you want to clarify perhaps what that type of agenda item might look like. We can look into that, looking into schools. And I don't know, maybe Christy, can you possibly chime in there real quick?
Unfortunately, I did not hear the comment. It's very muffled on our end for me.
Okay, I will try to repeat it. Is it better?
Yes.
Okay, I asked, do we have on an agenda if witness the board giving approval for schools who are not following board's rules? And do we have like any like enforcement about schools that perform illegal activities and fraudulent activities?
So that's not on the agenda now. I believe I'm hearing you're asking if we have on the agenda the enforcement of schools who are not properly following the rules.
If I witness the board come and examine the school and they gave it a pass, even though school does not follow board rules.
Okay, that sounds like that's not on the agenda. We do have a procedure. It sounds like if you happen to have a complaint, you can certainly email us that complaint and we can look into it that way.
Okay, and if the board members give the school pass, even though they don't follow rules because they have relationship with owners of the school, so to whom do I follow this complaint that it will not go to the person who gives the pass to the school that does not follow the rules?
This is Sabina, legal counsel. I would suggest, can a moderator, can you put the appropriate BBC email address into the chat box for this commenter? Christy, do you want it to be yours, or is there a general complaint email box?
It would be our main email, which is barbercosmo.
barbercosmo@dca.ca.gov.
Yes, I would suggest emailing directly to that email. That way it gets to the proper channels.
Okay. So, okay, thank you. Have a good one.
This is the moderator. There are no further requests. And the email is being displayed on the screen at this moment at the bottom part of the slide. It's in red. Well, there's a background in red and the email is in white. Again, barbercosmo@dca.ca.gov. Would you like me to close the Q&A? No further requests.
Yes, you can. Okay, so moving to number 5, then suggestions for our future agenda. And I'm hoping Kelly and Jacob, we might put yours on there.
Absolutely. So developing some type of communication that would be licensee specific or license category specific in their language that would communicate their scope of practice and reiterate and a high level the scope of practice. Love it.
Jacob, did you want to offer a brief description for yours? It's up to you.
Yes. So if we could do maybe talking about how to let inform consumers around potential ethical issues, I guess I would say. So maybe discussions on helping consumers be aware of medical, what we would call it, medical, not malpractice, but issues we're not allowed, scope of practice. There we go.
Great. Any other agenda items?
This is Steve Weeks speaking. I have a question. I guess I would pose it under the suggestions for future agenda items because these future agenda items often have budget implications. But can I ask Christy, is there anything happening now that we should be aware of that could have a negative impact on the board budget?
At this time.
Okay, thanks.
Good question. Okay, Well, thank you everyone for your contributions. I think we can,
Quickly,
yes.
before we adjourn, I just wanted to acknowledge the inspections department and one of our newest inspectors, Henry Brown, I believe his name is, and Tiffany and her leadership with that department. I've really noticed a change in the tone in our industry of these inspections, and it's much more of a helpful liaison from the government, and they're catching the people who are doing wrong, but they're really aiding and explaining some of those smaller citation offenses. So kudos to the inspection department.
Nice, thank you, Kelly.
That's all from me.
Great. Okay. There's nothing else. We can move to adjournment. And thank you everyone for your contributions today. It was a good meeting.
Good to see you all.
Thank
Yeah,
you
good to
all.
see you too.
Thank you,
We can
everyone. Our
adjourn.
next committee meeting is our Legislation and Budget Committee.